Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the press conference of the 35th edition of IDFA, the International Documentary Film Festival Amsterdam. I'm Orwan Arabia, the artistic director, and I'm here to walk you through the final announcements of the press conference of the upcoming competitions and lineups and opening film. But we will also have an overview of almost everything in the edition, very briefly, because most of these information were already announced and can be found already on our website. Before we begin, let's take a look at the campaign of the 35th IDFA. The campaign, the poster, and the video for our upcoming edition were designed by artist and filmmaker Louis Hot, whose film Four Journeys opened IDFA last year. We are taking a different approach towards poster design, towards how we present every edition, starting this year, by inviting a different artist to comment in their own language, with their own style, on what we do. Louis Hot here is creating this very interesting complexity between imagination and reality, between archive or memory and the imagination of the artist. That, to us, is the heart of everything we do and how we understand documentary filmmaking. It is an examination of reality mixed with the genuine, the authentic imagination of an artist behind that, or of multiple artists. It is a special edition because it is still a pandemic era. So we are past the harshest of times with COVID-19. However, fears are still there. We, however, at IDFA believe that we are all responsible: festival staff, audience, the press, and the filmmakers, and that we can have an almost normal festival together. We can live with COVID-19 when we share responsibility towards each other, when we keep the actual practices that can help us minimize infections, and this way we can actually have a festival. So together we're betting on that, and we will be following up with all the instructions of the Dutch authorities, but also keeping an eye on the world and all the many different guests who are coming to join us and their own current situations with COVID-19, because until today, we already have about 2,500 registered guests coming to visit IDFA, and it is still 3 weeks or a bit less. So there is still some time, and we will, as we see it now, we will have the numbers of visitors, of guests, of professionals coming to IDFA back to pre-pandemic numbers. The films we received, however, they were not back to pre-pandemic numbers, they were more than what used to be. So we received more films than before, and we had an amazing team that I'm going to speak about a bit at the end of this press conference, who had to go through thoroughly a massive number of submissions to put together a program that is not only about selecting what's better than other films or what's the best in the world. It is also about making our own, as a group of curators, making our own statement, as our own curatorial approach that comes together as a commentary, as part of the experience, the collective experience that we live through at such times in the world. How do we do that? With many different elements. But first, we are celebrating the 16th birthday of DocLab. IDFA's new media program is one of the pioneering programs in the world of new media, and it's been 16 years. A lot of growth happened, so much growth, and at 16, I dare say, it is already a very mature part of the world of documentary art. It brings technology and humanity together in a way that no other art does. To talk about DocLab and what's happening over there this year, I invite my colleague Casper Sonne to join me on stage and tell you all about it. Cas.
Thank you, Orwa. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. How do we make sense, connect, and interact with the world around us? The answer, of course, is, where is the clicker? Thank you. The answer, of course, to how we connect, interact, and make sense of the world around us is nervous systems. With a special theme program this year, IDFA DocLab dives into all kinds of nervous systems, both inside our body and in the realities that surround us. With our exhibition, performances, and events, we explore the world and ourselves through different senses, different technologies, but we also look at the nervousness of systems themselves, the systemic challenges facing the world today. This year's program, again, is the result of a fantastic team effort. Together with my curatorial colleagues, Wotinke Vermeer and Annabel Troost, in close collaboration with industry manager Jorinde Segal, everybody else in the DocLab team, and an expanding international community of artists that never cease to amaze us. So let's dive into the three main program sections of DocLab this year. First of all, the digital storytelling competition, then we move to the immersive nonfiction competition, and finally, we look at the DocLab Spotlight program. So, the digital storytelling competition. This year, it brings together 10 amazing projects and some of the best digital art and interactive storytelling we have seen so far. First of all, we see projects reinventing existing digital platforms and formats, such as His Name is My Name, a deeply personal project story told on Instagram. As well as Echo Tang, Her Body and Other Mukbang, challenging TikTok and internet culture. Or Taylor McHugh transgressing arcade video games with He Fucked the Girl Out of Me. But we also see projects reinventing or inventing completely new formats, such as Alone Together, inviting us to have a conversation with AI, or siblings Bieke and Dries de Poorter and their poetic fusion of artificial intelligence and photography. And the third one in this category is conceptual artist Constant Dullard's Social Bouquet, which turns tools into art and art into tools, challenging the proprietary ecosystems of corporate technology. Finally, in the digital storytelling competition, we see traditional formats and bite-sized clickbait making the internet increasingly predictable. We are also very happy to see at the same time that this trend is still being challenged by artists all over the world, creating amazing long-form, interactive, and new experiences, such as the one behind me, Glasveden, an interactive graphic novel, but also the beautiful interactive essay, A South Asian Queer Pamphlet by Sumya Mukhopadhyay, and Hakeem Adams' wonderful audio-driven exploration of identity in Ghana Airways. And finally, Animar's Labyrinth, a playful invitation to obsess about people on the internet as they obsess about someone somewhere lost in physical reality. Labyrinth. Which brings us to the immersive nonfiction competition. This year, the immersive nonfiction competition has been expanded from 10 to 12 projects, basically in response to the explosive growth XR and immersive art are going through across all kinds of different media. First of all, we see VR becoming a mature medium with truly amazing in-headset experiences like Missing 10 Hours, Yang Yeong Carving with Memories by Sungwon Lee, The Anticipation of Rain by Naima Karim, and Christine is Not Well by Siam Krito. Secondly, we see artists expanding into physical and multisensory forms of virtual reality, such as the sensitively tactile With These Hands by Tessa Rasucinska, the edible Plastisapiens, combining VR with live cooking and food performances, and Bombina Bombast's immersive theater play Slumberland, using remote performers and local audiences, bringing them together in a collective virtual sleepover. And finally, In Pursuit of Repetitive Beats, the groundbreaking multisensory VR experience that we are presenting together with the Amsterdam Dance Event in collaboration with LFF. But of course, the immersive nonfiction competition isn't only about headset experiences and virtual reality. What we can see in immersive nonfiction is there's a whole range of other types of projects as well, such as the Full Dome experience, Dancing with Dead Animals, as well as the sensory installation and exploration of the cosmos, The Butterfly Effect by Mathilde Renaud. Both projects winners of this year's Film Fund DocLab Interactive Grant. Then there is Ali Santana's audiovisual extravaganza with a sound installation, Sound Pyramid, Iket. And finally, in this competition, we have My Toe Uncensored, a uniquely physical performance installation for which artist Lisa Schamley created an OnlyFans account for her big toe. And yes, the artist's toe will at specific times also be present in the exhibition. Which brings us to the third and final section, the DocLab Spotlight program. Here we feature 10 works reflecting all digital and immersive genres, ranging from international festival favorites to groundbreaking research projects. This year's Spotlight, for instance, brings us award-winning XR projects like The Man Who Couldn't Leave, the apocalyptic virtual dining experience Okawari, and the incredibly delightful new update available. But we also see the continuing rise of Full Dome creation, with an expanded program created and presented by Wotinke Vermeer in Amsterdam's Artist Planetarium. And particularly Partita for 8 Voices, I think, is one of the best pieces I have ever seen in a dome. And last but not least, Spotlight also presents a fantastic range of live performances and immersive theater, with the unforgettable one-on-one experience Horizon, presented in collaboration with the National Theatre, Funeral by, let's say, the international darlings of immersive theater, Ontroerend Goed, presented in collaboration with the Brakke Grond, and finally, a very special new collaboration between ONX Studio in New York and IDFA DocLab, bringing a motion capture stage to the festival for a unique series of live performances and workshops, supported by the Onassis Foundation. Closing off, I want to say the DocLab conference this year will be presented again in the form of a series of live events starting on 11 November, coinciding with the festive opening of the Nervous Systems exhibition. And of course, before I hand you over back to Orwan Irabia and the stellar film lineup of IDFA, a huge thank you to all of DocLab supporters and R&D partners. The Ministry of Economic Affairs, Klik.nl, Gieske Strijbis, the Nederlands Film Fund, Onassis, IDFA Dikke Vrienden Plus, and all of our R&D partners, including MIT and Beeld en Geluid. Thank you for keeping us nervous, sane, and sensory.
Thank you very much, Casper, and looking forward to all of that. I'll start from where Casper is leaving us. We understand this festival as a platform for producing cultural value, of producing meaning, not only as a space to watch the new films, not only as a hierarchical understanding of what's best and what's better and what's so on. It is a space for us where we have a responsibility towards this film world, the debates it has, the discussions it needs to have, and towards the audience, the city, life, civic life of our society and the societies that the films will travel to after IDFA. This made us rethink the way that, for example, IDFA promotes itself. So instead of having promotional items like we used to do, like many festivals do, we decided that instead of promotional item since last year, it's a book. So what IDFA does from now on is that every year it supports a new book that is related to our work, to the world of film and documentary film in particular, and gives it out as a gift to all the filmmakers and artists taking part in the festival. But also it becomes the annual recommended book of IDFA. Last year that was Order in Chaos, the book from renowned Danish editor Niels Pagh Andersen. And this year our book is Collective Wisdom by Kat Cizek and William Oricchio. This is a book from MIT, the partners of DocLab for years, together with DocLab, together with MIT, have a very special program that is the DocLab, IDFA DocLab R&D, Research and Development Program. And after years of collaboration, this is only fitting that we celebrate the new work, the new study from our colleagues and friends at MIT. It is a book that examines a big question in the world of film today, in the world of documentary film in particular, but in art generally, and that is co-creation, creativity as a mutual or a common process rather than an individual creating. This has many different meanings, and it is a question that deserves to be seen as part of a new examination of art. You'll need to read the book to see how many different ways we can understand this. From here, we go back to say why Laura Poitras is our guest of honor. Laura Poitras is the year's event. The new film of Laura Poitras, All the Beauty and Bloodshed, won the Golden Lion in Venice, being only the second documentary film to ever win the Golden Lion in Venice. However, we of course invited Laura Poitras before that happened, and even before we knew that the new film will actually be finished. Why? Because Laura Poitras' body of work as filmmaker represent a very unique part of what's happening in documentary film. Laura Poitras is deeply, deeply obsessed with the question of justice. Her work is, if I may say, driven by an amazing amount of anger that is very well controlled. She never sounds angry, but you see that what's happening in the world deeply offends our guest of honor. The way she works on it has a continuous effort towards raising those flags of all of us should worry. Something is going wrong. From her very first film that she co-directed, that is Flag Wars, in 2003, where she worked on gentrification in an American town, all the way until she takes us on a journey with Nan Goldin, the renowned artist, in her 2022 new film. Laura Poitras is not only a filmmaker, but she is first and foremost a filmmaker. But she also managed throughout her life to have an amazing level of influence over the worlds of journalism, the world of activism through media. She is one of the founders of probably the most famous independent online magazine or newspaper, that is The Intercept, an influential platform. She is a founder of multiple organizations that care about digital safety, security. She worked a lot on the topics of privacy and the relationship between oppression and technology. And she also created or co-founded Field of Vision, an organization that supports filmmakers to make important film work, documentary film work about what's happening around us in the world. Now, to manage to do all of that and still be such an outstanding filmmaker is a rare example of, let's say, impact. Laura Poitras is one documentary filmmaker who I can say had a hand in changing the world. from the Edward Snowden revelations, to which she was personally instrumental, to the various initiatives she took in favor of reporting or of journalism or filmmaking as an art. We are very happy that she will be with us. There will, of course, be a centerpiece master talk with her that I will be moderating, and we will run a full retrospective of all the films she has made. But we will also have her top 10. That is a program curated by Laura Poitras, and she is approaching it a bit differently than usual, because she's not only looking at her top films, she's also trying to curate in the sense of trying to make a statement. She wants to tell us something about oppression, about the way that systems of oppression deal with people, with dissidents, or with people with a different opinion, or with normal citizens. Highlights here are many, but I would say she is bringing us a very, very interesting thing for IDFA, which is to play Shoah of Claude Lanzmann. So we will have a full day screening of Shoah. We will also be watching together Jafar Panahi's This Is Not a Film from 2011. The day following the screening, we will have together with her a panel talk with the International Coalition for Filmmakers at Risk to talk about what's happening in Iran, in other parts of the world too, Turkey, Myanmar, and other countries, to examine the oppression or the incarceration of filmmakers in different parts of the world. She's also introducing us to the work of forensic architecture. Some of these works have been at IDFA before, but this time we're hopefully going to really dive with her and the team of forensic architecture into their method of work that is quite influential in the world of art and film. So much more to say about this selection, but I leave that to what you will be reading about this in detail on IDFA's website. The other curated programs of IDFA, focus programs, are curated by our team. And they are two this year. First has the title Around Masculinity. We tried so much to find our own approach that is not just a reaction to what's happening in the world around us, to war, to aggression, to a patriarchal world with a lot of inspiring movements that need to change this reality, but also to the question of masculinity being at the center of all of this. Masculinity is not in itself necessarily a negative value, but in a way, there is something here of a social construct that is making masculinity cause much of the problems. We need to examine that. We need to look at how we can get past that part of our history that lasted a few millennia. And to do that, we go back to the history of film. And we see many different ways that some form of aggressive or aggression connected to gender, to masculinity, has been shown to us by filmmakers, sometimes on a wide, large-scale political meaning or a reflection of that, and in other instances, it is at home, in family, on a much smaller scale, but in many ways, a similar or a parallel world. Here we go to examples such as Crazy of Hedy Honigman. Watching Crazy of Hedy Honigman again in this context will be an amazing experience because it is a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece on men and war, on overcoming PTSD, but it also is an opportunity to remember Hedy Honigman and to pay tribute to a departed great filmmaker of the Netherlands and of the world of documentary film. We look at masculinity in film with a few, or in the film world, with a few films too. We go back to the Maisels film from '66, Meet Marlon Brando. it's an exciting thing, for me at least, because I'm a big Brando fan. And to go back and look at Brando, the great example of a highly committed, very ethical, amazingly talented man who was an icon, and maybe still is, and just look at him under the title Around Masculinity. And I believe that we will see clearly what we used not to see. That blind spot that we were so used not to notice, to see that you can be so inspiring about so many things, while at the same time be absolutely unacceptable, particularly about the way you, for example, treat women. Another example here is Burden of Dreams, going back to Les Blanc's 1982 film on the making of Fitzcarraldo of Werner Herzog. Also, we've seen this film maybe before, but have we watched it under the title Around Masculinity? And what will happen if we do might be actually an inspiring new revelation, as it was to our team. Many other films, I'll only highlight Anand Patwardhan's Father, Son and Holy War, an Indian masterpiece that examines directly the understanding of nationalist, Hindu nationalism, and how it impacts men, and how men shape the reality around them through that impact, whether politically or, again, on the level of individuals and families. Much more to watch here. There are many films, and there are also new films that are not on this slide behind me now, that will be added later today on IDFA's website as we gradually announce much of our program. The second focus program is, I think, part of the artistic zeitgeist. Playing Reality is our examination of how documentary cinema and theater has been interacting. Both arts has been learning so much from each other. Since film was invented, it's not new. However, in recent years, documentary elements became a very common thing in theater productions. And documentary films are using theatricality or theatrical elements and vocabulary more and more. This is, again, not so differently from Louis Hot-Hot-Hot's video on IDFA's edition, all about the merger of imagination and reality, the understanding of truth that acknowledges that fantasy is part of reality rather than a different thing on the side. In Playing Reality, we will be showing a number of classics that use theatricality in many different ways. So with Every Little Thing, Nicolas Philippe Bayer takes us to a mental facility where the patients are preparing to do a play, one of his masterpieces, no doubt. With Little Dieter Needs to Fly, Herzog asks Dieter, his protagonist, to reenact his most scary, terrible memories. With Theater of War, Lola Arias takes us back to the Malvinas War, to the Falkland Island War, with veterans remembering, but she builds the theatrical setting for that. Salam Cinema of Mohsen Makhmalbaf is his tribute to cinema, but in his tribute, or very famous tribute, Salam Cinema, he actually uses a very theatrical setting. It is a casting call. There is a stage, and the characters come on stage and give us what they have, introduce us to themselves. So many more examples, The Arbor of Cleo Bernard being one of the best films, I think, of history of documentary film is here too, but there is so much more to discover. And together with the International Theatre Amsterdam, there will be a response from them. So part of the program will also be 2 events at ITA, one being a new theater play that is a documentary theater play, and the other being a run of a recording or a registration of a documentary theater play. Moving on, still, like every year, the largest part of IDFA, of our program, is our Best of Fest section. It is a bit less than 50 films this year, and it brings the year's harvest. So again, to clarify, IDFA's program is made up more or less of two halves. One half is new films that IDFA is launching to the world. These are the international premieres and the world premieres and sometimes European premieres. And the other half is only films new to the Netherlands, to the Dutch audience. And we consider this to be an exciting, very important part of our role at IDFA, which is to show our audience, but also the industry, what is the best, according to us, of course, of what was introduced in other festivals this year. The section Masters is where we celebrate the new works of some of the most renowned filmmakers, some of the best authors of the documentary art. Here, we have always a challenge of examining the history of film through the fact that this is the only part of IDFA where there is a majority of men. This year, it's a little less disastrous than usual, with 10 women filmmakers, 15 men filmmakers. This is the best we could achieve so far, and that is why I believe we will be reconsidering or taking a look and redesigning this section of IDFA next year. However, in Masters 2022, there are some of the most brilliant gems that you can watch. Here we have the return of Martin Scorsese with a new film, the international premiere of Personality Crisis, a brilliant music film that is not only a music film, it is a film that really takes us into an experience, into a part of the history of music, but also the history of New York, the history of culture, the history of punk, with the lead singer of the New York Dolls. I'm not going to be able to salute all of the great masters on this list. However, I'll mention that Jürgen Lath made a new brilliant film. Ritipan, the same, that Patricio Guzman surprised all of us with a film that is so new in its form, so different from the recent films he's been making. And Nishta Jain brought us a new film from India that is also outstanding. The famous Spanish fiction director, Isabel Coixet, made a brilliant film with the title The Yellow Ceiling. She is looking very seriously, investigating with a very stylistically interesting way a Me Too case in theater in Spain. And Gianfranco Rosi with his new film accompanying the journeys of Pope Francis around the world. There is so much more on this list, but it is all memorable films. After that comes Paradox, our art section. Paradox is the part of IDFA where films that really go or live in the space of art as well as film, that really jump between the two in the most nimble way. Here we will see this section of IDFA expanding into more artistically courageous or genre-bending works such as Philip Schaffner's Europe, such as Gaston Solniki's A Little Love Package, then more surprising, artistically surprising works like Ali Islami's A Stretch of Time. Many other films by renowned or new filmmakers are on this list, and we are sure it will be an exciting discovery of how it can all be done differently. As usual, IDFA is celebrating youth documentary film. In the competition for youth documentary film, we are introducing one new element this year, which is labeling films for 2 different age groups. So there will be some for the younger, some for the older children. And this means that the section is going to cover a wider range of film, of approaches. This year, it is very special that we believe it to be the most international time that youth documentary competition at IDFA has ever been. Because most of the time, this section of IDFA follows the countries or the nations where there is national funding for producing films, particularly for this part of audience. So it is not common unless there is a film fund that gives that kind of funding. It's rare to find films for this group of audience. Gladly, more films are being made despite this challenge in countries where no such funding is available. And this widens the spectrum and offers the young audience more options, more visibility, more worldview, wider worldview. IDFA competition for short documentary, I must say first that short documentary films over the past 2-3 years and until this edition are becoming bigger and bigger at IDFA. So it is not only that we have short films in the competition, but we also have short films in many other sections of the festival. The overall idea here, or policy, if one may say, is that shorts have no less value. Some of them even embarrass the feature-length films because they can be so complex and dense, so artistically mature over a very short period of time. What really makes it a very interesting challenge, why do you need to make a film that is longer? And in this quite eclectic lineup, we will see films from many different parts of the world. We will go to Algeria with Ashawik of Elina Kastler. We will go to spend time with children, refugees from the Ukraine, with Ruslan Fedotov's Away. We will go to Argentina with Martin Benchimol's A Robust Heart, with Budapest Silo, an exceptional, visually exceptional film from Hungary. We will see a very boundary-pushing, ethically courageous film from China, Is There a Pine on the Mountain? There's so much more, but all of this, of course, has already been announced, so I will not talk more about it, and I invite you to discover this lineup because it's been selected from a record number of short films. The films in this lineup were selected out of 1,700 submissions of short films that we have received this year. A truly outstanding figure. Across sections, we still have 3 very important awards to give. It's the cross-section competitions at IDFA, pick films from every section, and a jury of international professionals will watch all of these films, no matter which section they are. These are films selected or nominated for this award by the staff of IDFA, by the programming team. IDFA Award for Best Feature Film, IDFA Award for Best Dutch Film, and the Beelden Geluid IDFA Reframe Award for the creative use of archive material. These are the 3 cross-section awards that do each bring a different angle or a different pathway into the program of IDFA. Now, the core work of the challenge of the programming team is always to watch all the new films and really try to imagine how can we curate, group some of these films in different sections. Our section Frontlight is on seeking truth. Frontlight, the idea here is simple. This is where the light is on the camera. So this is where we're trying to see, in way of evidence, the reality in front of us. In Frontlight, we have an exceptional lineup that also travels the world and examines some of the most important topics, subject matters. We will have Eva Weber's Merkel, a portrait of Angela Merkel that is exceptionally important today as she just left recently her long post as Chancellor of Germany. We have from Brazil a symphony for a common man accompanying an internationally influential politician as he loses influence because he was saying something different to the general preference of the international community. In examples such as Racist Trees from the US, we introduce a film that tells us about the relationship between land, between the map of a local milieu, and the way that real estate, that money, and racism come together to separate different groups of the society or a community. With The Lost Souls of Syria, we meet an outstanding human rights lawyer who is trying to use the known or the famous Caesar files, photographs of people murdered under torture in Syria, and try to build a case or many different cases to make sure that such massive crime against humanity does not go unpunished. The Last Dolphin King is a world premiere of a new Netflix film that examines the brutality against animals in the entertainment field. And the Itilat Rose, that's an exceptional film here that spends the last 2 weeks or so before Taliban took over Kabul in the offices with the team of Afghanistan's outstanding independent newspaper, Itilat Rose, with the same name. The film is made and produced by the team of the newspaper themselves, and it is truly surprising how mature and well-made this film is for a group of first-time filmmakers who are good journalists. Luminous is the second part, is the sister section to Frontlight, but they fight a lot. Frontlight is about the truth. Luminous is so much more about experience. So this is where we see films that take us on journeys, character-driven or story-driven, more narrative, more imaginative, less about a particular subject and more about a complexity. Here we will see so many different films with many different unique languages and styles. There isn't much to bring them together other than a real attempt from many different filmmakers around the world to examine memory, family, and oppression. Here, we will go on a big journey from Taiwan to Argentina, from Réunion to China. There's so much. There's an image of a world that emerges from these films together. And if I want to say what it is, I would say it is certainly a world in pain, but still full of people trying, people who are resilient, persistent, and not giving up. Anyway, I think there is so much to discover here that I will not linger so much on. I want to highlight When Spring Comes to Bucha, which is an immediate response filmmaking, example of filmmaking. Mila Tashaeva, who is a Ukrainian well-established photographer, went home to Bucha right after the infamous massacre, the moment when we were all shocked around the world by the images of mass graves left by the Russian invaders. And she managed to make an immediate film. It's a very interesting question. Can you make an immediate film so quickly? How can you? How do you do it? I think we will need to discuss this with her and to watch this film and to think about the possibility of immediacy as an element in filmmaking. Okay. First, let me say a few words about our two main competitions again. IDFA has two equally important top competitions since last year: the international competition and Envision competition. We understand this as a juxtaposition, as a dialectic of two different kinds or two different groups that are not so well defined probably because they shouldn't be, because the art of filmmaking itself is a very open thing that keeps on shifting and changing and discovering itself again and again. However, Envision is the competition where the filmmakers were trying to invent the film and to come up with ways of making it with vocabulary and language and grammar of filmmaking that they did not know before, but were trying to invent. International competition, on the other hand, is made of those rounded, maturely made films that bring together important questions of our contemporary life or of our memory or our future, but in a way that relies on a strong, well-tested stylistic and artistic approach. First example, or first film in the Envision competition, this will be the international premiere of Crosswords. Mario Valero directs a collective effort. This is a co-created film. A group of people, young people, are faced with a crime in their town. And when this crime happens around them and the investigations start to fill everything around their life, media and discussions, they start to change, they start to think, they start to examine their own relationships differently. In a way, a totally irrelevant murder took place on the side, but it had repercussions that changes the group. This is a very unique film in its style, and it brings together quite some elements from Nouvelle Vague into something that is so much more collective, actually, than Nouvelle Vague. Roberta Torre, Italian filmmaker and theater maker, in her new film, The Fabulous Ones, is creating a very beautifully staged dramaturgy that basically the questions here are about being a trans woman. Living as a trans woman is something that is different from dying as a trans woman. Because when you're alive, you can at least defend yourself a bit. But when you die, you're not there anymore. And family, society, religion take you back out of your own choices for your life. Take you back to a gender normality according to this understanding that makes families and the church and religion and so on much more comfortable. In The Fabulous Ones, a group of trans women try to remember their departed friend with a way that dignifies her, that keeps her dignity and builds this communal sense, an alternative to an oppression that is for granted in society. Mania Akbari, renowned artist and filmmaker from Iran, based in London, comes this year with How Dare You Have Such a Rubbish Wish? How Dare You Have Such a Rubbish Wish is her examination of the history of the image of woman in Iranian cinema. And this is not only about Iranian cinema as we know it, this is about also popular Iranian cinema, about the history, decades of Iranian cinema, where the image of woman was always problematic, was always something to question now. She builds this montage of so many different films of the whole history of Iranian cinema, and she narrates or she weaves a voice of the woman talking to the male director, the director who has always used the women in this or that way in their film. She also constructs this around her own body that becomes, in a way, a beautiful map of this rather painful history. In Invoked, Luca Papiš and Serda Vučo take us to examine the first democratic elections in Serbian history. And today they go back to meet the main 5 candidates for that elections, to see what happened there. This film brings these 5 characters between their archival image from when they were running to their realities today as totally irrelevant persons, probably, and builds the most beautiful, rhythmic construction of a tragicomedy that is truly tragic, but also inspiring in the way that it is also funny because of how absurd the political reality of trying to come up with democracy all of a sudden can be. Wai Ching-kuo from China is a known, well-established photographer also. And after working for years on photographic projects in something called Foreigner Street, he comes with a film in that space. Foreigner Street is that Luna Park, somewhere in China, where the whole world is brought down, where you have a small Eiffel Tower, where you have many of the world's landmarks reproduced, and where people go on touristic excursions to spend a good time. In this absurd kind of place, there is a man who has a history of being a gangster, but is now, let's say, not mentally not so well, but he finds a home inside this park. And he lives there, and he sees no border between heaven and earth. He sees no border between that other world and this real one. The filmmaker spends time with this person and tells us a story of sanity and the challenge of discovering that reality is not necessarily the truth. Angie Vincito takes us to meet the young generation of Russians today. In Manifesto, the filmmaker is creating an image that I believe to be unique, unprecedented, of what it is like to be a young person in Russia today. He uses the live streams that youth of Russia produced over the past few years, when they decided from school or from home or in the morning or on their way in the street to live broadcast something of their daily lives and comment on that. These endless piles of material that they produced were the rushes for Manifesto. And here, I think we will get the opportunity to discover what Russia is like for a young person today, like we never do. It's also a film that is so emotionally visceral, so painful, but at the same time extremely smart and, let's say, wise. It is a film that shows us how much we do not know. Ishtar Yassin Gutierrez comes with My Lost Country, a film that the Costa Rican Iraqi artist constructs or weaves from a whole memory between her and her father, who was a renowned Iraqi theater maker. The father was in exile, and him and his family had to live in many different countries during a moment in history when there was a lot of solidarity between different third world countries. That those journeys, that experience from home to exile, from one country to the other, ending up in Latin America, for the father ending up in London, but for the daughter in Latin America. This experience is a whole mosaic, a whole canvas with many little pieces of memory that together share the experience of a family losing home and living globally with that memory turning into a mosaic. Ignacio Agüero, the master Chilean filmmaker, comes with notes for a film. The mature, seasoned filmmaker is extremely playful in his new film. That's what puts it in vision competition. He goes back to a book from the end of the 19th century by a Belgian engineer who was commissioned to take part in the building of a railway in Chile. A railway that actually changed the history, the history of the land and the history of nature. It changed the history of economy a bit, but through doing that, it deleted whole green parts of the nation or of the land of Chile. And through this book from the end of the 19th century, Agüero builds a theatrical setting where contemporary comments, interviews, and realities merge together with actors reading passages from that book, so that we see this continuum of reality from end of 19th century until today, and we see how a colonial economical focus contributed to changing the history of the environment, of nature. Khalid Jarrar is one known, well-established artist from Palestine, comes with his new first film. It's Notes on Displacement. What is very special here is that what the artist does is that he does not observe the experience of a family displaced from Syria going on its way to Germany, but he decides to embed himself as a member of the family and to take the actual journey with them. This makes it another example of how work or creativity can be collective when there is such a partnership or such an eye-level relationship between the artist and the people that the artist wants to depict in their film. Euphemia Zemvragaki in Light Falls Vertical makes a film that sounds impossible at the first time, but it truly was one of the films that moved us a lot. She grew up with violence at home, in an island, but her father passed away early. Now she goes to another island and she meets another man who reminds her somewhat, somehow, because of the violence he has inside of him. And the man is willing to talk about his violence, to examine it with her in front of her camera. This takes her back to her own memory and sends her back home to an island where she grew up that she never visited before. With this creation of this parallel world, of this multiverse of parallels, of relationships, of vulnerabilities and experience of violence, she takes us on this amazing journey that would have sounded unlikely, but here it is in a brilliant film. Another collective piece comes from Brazil. Rosashen is a film that didn't end, a film that will never end. That's how the team presents it. It is a film that examines the daily life or experience of a community of trans people in Brazil, with the most open, raw understanding of what film is Collectively, they try to portray their questions in their lives. I learned so much from this film. I learned so much because of how profound they are without pretension, and how seriously they take the question of filmmaking, and they can do that together as a collective. It's an exceptional film that I think we will remember, and as senior programmer Joost Dame says, it has the most beautiful scene in this year's edition. Biserka Shuran made Scenes with My Father. The Dutch young filmmaker and her Yugoslav father meet in a conditional space, in a theatrical space that she creates to talk to him about memory, history, and family. Yugoslavia is reborn here, and the relationship between a father who was displaced during the war to the Netherlands, and that's how she was born, a father who speaks perfect Dutch, but who doesn't live in the Netherlands anymore, trying to reconnect with his daughter, to open up, and the daughter is taking it very seriously. It's a very well-designed, staged setting, and that makes it a very interesting, a strong first film of Shuran. That was in Vision competition. Now to the international competition, and here, in the last part of my presentation of our press conference before we reach the end, we will go through some truly awaited films that we were also waiting for. First, Lea Glob, Apollonia, Apollonia. You can say this is a film that follows over time the experience of a young woman wanting to be an artist, a painter. Painting is not the most fashionable art form today, and painting is not so much of a woman-friendly art itself. The milieu is not so up to date, if one may say. But she manages to go all the way from a poor background to the most chic, the most high-end upscale galleries, and to really take us on this journey with her. However, I think the most important way or element in this film is that this is not only a portrait of the artist in front of us, whose name is Apollonia. It is also a story of friendship, of 13 years of friendship between a filmmaker and an artist as they together grow older, experience life, experience pain, experience womanhood, but also ask big questions of art. An exceptional film. Colette and Justin is the first film of Alan Cassanda. Alan Cassanda goes to his grandparents, Colette and Justin. They live in France. They come from Congo, and the whole history of the decolonization of Congo is so deeply intertwined with the family's own history. One of the most mature first films I have seen in a long time. Cassanda operates and writes his voiceover like a master filmmaker, and he takes us on a very rich, complex journey. Family history and the history of colonization and decolonization come together so strongly, and parts of the history of the liberation of Congo that we have probably never seen before will come here to our vision and our ears, and it will be a memorable experience that I think many around the world will learn so much from. John Bank Carlsen, the exceptional, the unique filmmaker from Denmark, went on wandering in Arizona, USA. And there, in a small town, he found a school, and in the school he found 5 young people who loved, dreamed about freedom, and it seemed like even there, in such a town, freedom was a little too much for the school, for the families, for the world around them, for reality. So what he did was to work together with them on creating, on theater, on acting their lives in a theater activity at school. The 5 young people share their dreams, share their stories. They actually are the ones who turn reality into fiction in collaboration with the old kind voice behind the camera working with them. From South Korea, Yukji Park brings us Girl Who Dreams About Time. Girl Who Dreams About Time is a film that begins with a young woman and her grandmother. They are shamans. They live in the mountain, and there they are fortune tellers. People come to them to know what will happen, to understand their reality or their problems. And there's a moment where the young one have collected enough money to go to college, Sujin. And when Sujin decides to go to college, a whole world of contradictions starts to emerge between her and her grandmother. She goes to college, and the development or the questions of this paradox of reality or contemporary life, city life, compared to that life in a small home in the mountains where you are a traditional shaman, come to the foreground. I think one of the most memorable moments in the film to me was when the shaman grandmother tells her granddaughter, "Don't you go do naughty stuff, because you know I will know." The Lattesters, Petra and Peter Lattester, the seasoned, celebrated Dutch filmmakers, have been at home for 2 years and something, like all of us during the pandemic. Being the very special filmmakers they are, and the caring, kind persons they are too, they decided to make a film inside this very restrictive reality of their own home. It is them, it is what they see online, it is the telephone, it is the knocking on the door, it is the garden of the home, the birds around it, the insects passing by. It is that micro world that we all were forced to live in for a long while during the pandemic. There, I believe they managed to build a microcosmos of so much more than their own home. Simon Chambers takes us to the last years of David Chambers' life. His uncle, a known or a well-established British actor. Preparing to die, knowing that he is going to die, the uncle is trying to find the last moments of life, to find meaning there, to find fun. It is in many ways, as the title suggests, borrowing the Shakespearean comedy, it is in many ways comedy about dying soon, about bidding farewell to one's life. The dying older actor, the uncle, is always quoting King Lear, and we are always trying to see how can you live with this integrity, with meaning, when you know that you're dying soon. I believe this is going to be an enjoyable film about death. Mila Turajlik, the winner of the IDFA 2017 main award with the film The Other Side of Everything, comes back after years and years of work with a diptych, with a film that is extremely special and that really deserves all the time she spent working on it. The starting point is that Tito, the leader of Yugoslavia for so many decades, during the communist time or the Cold War era, had his own cameraman, Labudovic. Stefan Labudovic was with Tito most of the time. And Labudovic archives are still there. In these archives, we can find all the history of the greatest thing that Tito did, which was the creation and the promotion of the non-aligned movement. Not surprisingly, not everybody knows about this part of history, but that was an influential movement during the Cold War that thought between NATO and the Warsaw Bloc, there must be a third way. We do not have to be either on the Soviet side or on the American side. Maybe we can create a solidarity system that offers a third way. This brought together Tito with Nasser of Egypt, Nehru of India, Makarios of Cyprus, and many others. Labudovic was with Tito when he traveled the world promoting this idea and meeting again and again with such great leaders of mostly third world countries. That moment of solidarity is something that Turajlic wants to bring back today in a moment when the world is gradually turning into bipolar for another time. There must be a third way, is probably what we can hear here. Non-aligned, seen from the Labudovic reels, is the first part of this diptych, or this film, that is 3 hours in total. The second part of the film is Cinegerias, that is more focused on the way that Labudovic filmed the Algerian liberation movement, the way that that solidarity system brought together different countries for a common dream of freedom and liberation. Alexander Abaturov comes with Paradise. The France-based Russian filmmaker is taking us to Altai, to the end of Russia from the side of Mongolia and China. The taiga forests are, just like most forests around the world, getting continuous fires. Global warming is causing fires there too. The starting point of this film is that the federal government of the Russian Federation had a new, extremely unique idea that I think is singular. Before allowing or permitting the budget to be spent on extinguishing a forest fire, the authorities need to examine the cost of extinguishing the fire and the cost of what the fire might take away. And unless extinguishing the fire costs less money than the value of what will burn if we do not extinguish the fire, there will be no permit to extinguish the fire. So extinguishing forest fires become a direct, simple, transactional balance sheet. But the people there, this community, cannot do it. So with budget or not, with permit or not, it is a community that has been living in that beautiful nature, with nature part of their history, their daily life and their mythology, their belief system. They cannot just accept this balance sheet. So they keep on trying. And their fire, by that, turns into a much bigger metaphor than that particular fire in the forest. I think the balance sheet changes its balance entirely here. Parallel World, Mei-Ling Xiao, Taiwanese filmmaker, is taking us on a 12 years journey with her and her daughter, Elodie, who has Asperger. It is a very intimate film on motherhood, on daughterhood, on the relationship of a filmmaker trying to take care of her daughter, of providing her daughter with the space to grow happy despite Asperger, and a daughter who is extremely talented, who's a brilliant artist, as a child already, and a mother who tries to keep on filming and editing in this home where they live together alone. The girl's father is in France. The parents are separated. But this also means that she and her daughter go to France, also to see maybe the school in France will be more accommodating for the special needs of Elodie, the daughter. We go back and forth between father and mother, between France and Taiwan, and Elodie grows older, grows up, and the mother grows up too. And it is, I think, one of the most generous films out there to share such a lifelong experience of motherhood with us. Juan Manuel Bugarin in Port Desire starts from a veteran of the Malvinas War, or the Falkland War, according to Falkland Islands War, according to the British name of it. The veteran, 40 years later, still does not accept that the Malvinas are not Argentinian. So he is planning to leave everything behind, take an Argentinian flag, take a small boat, and go all the way to the island to plant the flag there. And when he does that, he opens a whole world of family experience to us. Not only family, but also other veterans. The experience of a war that is still there, although it ended 40 years ago. Juan Ignacio Fernandez Hoppe, with Portrait of My Father, starts from the death of his father when he was 8. His father died on the beach alone with a little nylon bag next to him. There were doubts it was suicide, but then his mother decided, we don't need an autopsy. Let's just bury him. Years and years later, the son cannot live with that and needs to know. To know, he starts an investigation that is a cinematic investigation. He goes to archives, he digs material, he interviews family members, friends, and through doing that, in the most interestingly elegant way, visually and audibly elegant way, he builds a whole image of a family struggling with a loved one in deep, deep depression. And this experience turns this investigation into his own father into one of the most universal problems or challenges that bring people from many different cultures together. From Iran, Farnaz and Mohammad Reza Jorabshian take us to their family house. An extremely mature film, a saga in a way. A 100 years old house in Tehran, Iran, a house of the upper middle class, a family that lived 3 generations there. The story of those who lived in the house is a mirror of the history of Iran since before the Islamic Revolution until today. A journey that is deeply political and that takes us to a part or an aspect of life in Iran today that is, I think, very enlightening, because we rarely see that. And our image of Iran comes usually from more stereotyped sources. So this is a film not to miss that we believe will be seen everywhere around the world because it is very well made. Ria Tajiri is a brilliant filmmaker, Japanese-American filmmaker, and artist. In Wisdom Gone Wild, she has been filming for 16 years while taking care of her mother, who is suffering dementia, who was getting worse gradually over years. Now, Tajiri's style or filmic language is so balanced, mature, and strong that it feels already like a classic, like a film that has always been there. in a way, this film is teaching us very slowly, very kindly about losing reality. And it is examining whether reality is really that important. I think it's a beautiful film that will stay with me, at least, for a long time. Now to the big, drum roll. It's every year a big question: how do we open a new edition of IDFA? What does it mean to have an opening film? It's a very special thing because it needs to be what some colleagues would call a wide audience film. But then it also needs to be a meaningful thing. How do you open the world's biggest, most influential documentary film festival? How do you open the Documentary Film Festival of the Netherlands? How do you start? How do you kick off? What does it say, the choice of making, that we're making when we pick the opening film? I believe our choice for this year is a very clear statement of who we are. It's a film from the Netherlands, and it is Nikki Padidar's All You See. I will not be talking so much about this film. I'm going to say that it is uniquely bringing a massive mirror into our collective existence, that we can walk around this film, around our experience of watching it, and the mirror will always be there, and we will always have to ask ourselves, where is my blind spot? Where is it that I'm not aware how violent I am from the other side of this mirror? How is somebody else feeling that what I think is kind is actually othering and violent towards them? How I can be very defensive when I hear that. And this mirror is what Nikki Padidar courageously brings to us. It's very difficult to say, I've been wronged, when everybody is so defensive. So we are taking the side of the one who feels wronged and starting from giving full platform to this voice that says, please listen, it's not only what you see, and what you see should be more than that. So All You See is the opening film of IDFA that we're very proud of, that we will be showing in many theaters across the Netherlands on the opening night. So the opening event will be in Carré Theater in Amsterdam, but it will be at the same time screened in hopefully more than 50 cinemas around the country at the same evening. And of course, with the filmmaker, her protagonists, and her team joining us all the way through. And that's it. This program has been put together by a group of people that I am very honored, privileged to work with. And it is not a technicality. It is not a technicality or a diplomatic point to say that this was a collective effort of people, a group of programmers. We worked for years until we managed to bring such a group together. The process of selecting these films was overseen by senior programmers Joost Dame and Laura van Helsema, programmers Sarah Dawson, Jasper Hokke, Maria Campagna Ramia, and Mariah Venstra, and associate programmer Wood Lin. But they were supported very much, very well by a group of program advisors from around the world. So I will not read all the names, but I'm going to say that this group of people made this work possible. They spread around the world map. They come from every different walk of life, but they also come from a very diverse understanding of the art of documentary cinema. So diversity is not only about ethnicity or culture, language or skin color. It's also to us a question of artistic expression, stylistic sensitivity, and the way we understand film and its place in the world. A big thank you at the end to the great organizations who make IDFA possible. Of course, the Netherlands Ministry of Culture and Higher Education, the City of Amsterdam, but then Vriendenloterij, Deloitte, VPRO, Fond 21, Die Volkskrant, Giskes Strijbis, We Present, Amodo, NPO, Oxfam, and the big friends of IDFA for their generosity, for their loyalty, and for being our partners. And here we can say, come November 9, Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and the world of cinema will be with us here, and looking forward to sharing all of these great works with you, artworks, new media works, and films. Thank you, and a big thanks to the team, to everyone at IDFA, to the board of directors, the supervisory board, but now to the filmmakers. Those we selected, those we did not select, we're honored to have had the chance of watching your films. And selection is not merely a judgment call. It is also our statement. Thank you very much.